me a second, guys. It's always a thing. It is always a thing when it comes to putting this all together. It is always a thing. So, okay. Getting my headphones on. Sorry for all the noise and stuff that y'all are hearing because of the cords and whatnot. Trying to see. Okay. Sorry. Be right with one. Okay. Let's see. Hello, guys. My mic is way over there, and it seems to have a bit of an echo. Let's see if we can fix that. Let's see. Hello, hello. Okay, that's better. I hope that's better. Okay. Oh, okay. Hello. No, but okay. So, let's see. Okay, well, hello, welcome back to View from the Throne. Lorenza Nicole Molina, aka the Black Butterfly Queen, La Reina Mariposa Negra, and hey girl, how you doing? Hi. I want to ask y'all something. Okay, so y'all always, hear at the beginning when I'm having these technical difficulties because I'm getting used to this, and I want to see something. Okay, I'm gonna play around with this light, and I just want to see what y'all think. Okay, do y'all see a difference? Y'all see it? Hold on. I think that one's better. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's warmer. I'm gonna stick with that one. Okay, so I believe this is my 7th episode of View from the Throne visual podcast. And my podcast has been going on for a while now. So I have more audio episodes, but this is I believe the 7th episode of my audio podcast. Lord, there's been so many things going on. And I was trying to get to this before I even got on here, but yeah, I wanted to talk about what the number 7 means. Meaning, meaning of things. And I know the number 7 is a symbol, is a representation of, well, what it says here in Google is biblically, it symbolizes completion or perfection. And of course, God created the world in 7 days. And he rested on the 7th day. So he created everything in 6 days, and he rested on the 7th day, which would still be considered, that's echoing still. That's still very echoey. Okay. Does that less echo? Let me see. I don't really like that echo sound. I don't know if y'all are hearing that. But so yeah, God created the world in 7 days. because rest is a part of our world. I'm sorry about the in and out changes. Rest is a part of our world. It's a part of what we need. And I don't think people recognize that God intentionally rested to be an example for us to rest. And that is sounding sharp. I'm gonna turn that down and turn my volume up a bit. Okay. So God rested on the seventh day. And this is technically my seventh audio podcast. And it's interesting that the number means completion. And because I've been in a place where it seems like I'm leaving one space and going into another. And I'm in, I guess you would call a threshold space. And so I'm leaving one space, I'm going into another. And so I've been dealing with a lot of completion. I've been dealing with a lot of things being over, a lot of things being done, a lot of things that I thought I would bring with me, I'm not bringing with me. A lot of that. And a lot of people that I thought I would be bringing with me that I'm not bringing with me. And sometimes that's very disheartening, especially when some of those people helped you get to where you are now. And some of those people help build you up and believed in you and were the encouragers of you. And now you're in a space where they can't go, they can't be, and you have to like follow through without them. And I think about this last past Sunday, Sarah Jakes she had a sermon called Mirror and Model. And it really spoke to me because she was using the example of how the disciples followed Jesus and they were mirroring him, and how we're all created in God's image. You know, an image is a reflection in a mirror, and how they were mirroring Jesus, but how Jesus was really training them how to be the model that someone else would eventually mirror, because he was going to be broken down and rose back up in 3 days and eventually ascend after 40 days walking the earth back into heaven. And there was this part where she's talking about they were looking and they were gazing into heaven, and the angels there was like about 2 angels there, visibly anyway, saying, hey, why are you gazing into heaven? This same Jesus that you see go in this manner will come back in like manner, like pretty much go and carry on. There's another part when Jesus is still walking the earth before he's crucified, where one of the disciples wants to go and bury their father. They have a certain traditions that they practice with this burial. And Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead, come follow me. And it seems harsh. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But, it just meant that Jesus didn't want him to put tradition above following him. He didn't want him to put what the routines and what's expected, even though it seems reasonable. Even though it seems reasonable, he didn't want him to put those things before what he was being called to. And it's difficult to put a reasonable tradition, a reasonable thing to the side for what you're being called to. It's difficult because it's like, but I mean, this is reasonable. My father just passed. My family is grieving. He probably was the eldest. There's some responsibilities that are given to me that I have to follow. And you're telling me to not do those responsibilities or follow through on those things. And Jesus, he came to fulfill all these things. He didn't come to continue them. He came to fulfill the law, fulfill the prophecies, fulfill all these things so that we would have an opportunity to do something different. So we don't have to stick to laws and traditions and whatnot and what have you, right? And so he came for that. So there's going to be some times where God's going to ask you to not do something or abandon a post that logically doesn't align with anything. It's like, but this is, and it may be something that he told you to do originally. It may be something like, oh, in this season of your life, you were told to, do A, B, C, and D. And you've been doing that faithfully and it's worked. And then he was like, yeah, I don't want you to do that. And you're like, well, God, but it's the same, but it may be a similar situation where it's like, but why would you tell me to do this for this long? But then this same situation comes up and you tell me to do something different. And then sometimes you're wondering, am I hearing, am I hearing God, or am I just confused? Is the enemy messing with me? Or like, what is, what's going on? And it's because there's a new thing happening, and there's everything being made new. So there's nothing that you can't go back to doing things exactly the same way. You can't live in the past. You can't live in those things, even though those things worked, even though those things were required at one point, even though those things help keep you faithful. The things that even help keep you faithful, the things that help keep you in line. And God's like, I don't want you to depend on those things. I want you to depend on me. I want you to have the courage to go out and be yourself without all the rules and the regulations. I want you to just follow me, follow my will. And that's the thing. The thing that law gives you the freedom and not the freedom. In one way, law gives you your clear-cut rules, like what to do, what not to do. When this happens, that's what you do. Everybody has the same answer for everything. It's a cookie cutter. If this happens, then you do it like this. There's nothing to contest. It's just you have your answer, right? But laws can conflict because everybody's life is unique. And so at some point, that's not going to work. At some point, the cookie cutter idea and the cookie cutter way is not going to work. And the reason, and I can say this because when Moses, which that's the law that they were recognizing, the law of Moses and things, when they had conflict with, so one of the laws that they had were that if a woman is married and she loses her husband, then she's supposed to get married or get married to the brother or what have you and so forth. But and then also the law is like if a father had sons and daughters, then the son would get the inheritance, right? The firstborn or whatever, and then whatever happened, it will go to the next son and what have you. There was a man who had like 5 daughters and no sons. And when he passed, they were like, we should be able to keep our stuff because this is our father's stuff. And they had to go through a chain of judges to get to Moses, and Moses had to help them make the law where it was like, let's recognize that it is fair for a woman to keep her inheritance, right? But that was also a change in law, right? And it wasn't recognized before. And this was the law of Moses. Now, as time went on and permitted, some people didn't always recognize this law. This is why sometimes widows would still lose their sons to slavery, and their land would be sold if they couldn't marry into family and things like that. So we had 2 different laws. And depending on the situation, they're supposed to be recognized. But because everyone's situation is unique, it's not going to always fit. And so there's always going to be someone who falls through the cracks. And this is why it was important for Jesus to come, because he fulfilled the law where there needs no more rules or regulations, no more cookie cutter anything, and you get to now follow his will. Now this is different because it's like, okay, that structure is gone. What I was bound to a law, but now I'm bound to freedom. I don't know how to operate in freedom when my whole everything has been law, and not just my existence, but my parents' existence and my parents' existence and my I mean, up to 900 years in the past have been law. And then Jesus is here and you're telling me to follow your will. And I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what that means. You mean I have to wait and sit and seek you to get an answer? I can't just rely on cookie cutter things. But this is the wonderful thing about God's will. God's will for you is unique to you. And since he fulfilled the law, he goes before us and he covers all the things in the law, but he also gives us grace. So we don't need the law. We need the one that can cover the law and also give us grace. So all the things we have to do to try to just stay right for a law, we don't need. All the things we had to do just to try to stay right. And that wasn't like even a guarantee because, they had priests that had to go and carry the sins of their community to their tabernacle and all that stuff. And sometimes, and when they went behind that curtain or that veil or whatever, they would drop dead because you're always taking a risk because you don't know. The heart is deceptive. You don't know what's in your own heart sometimes. And you may think you're right and you're carrying all their sins to the throne of God, and you're imperfect yourself, and you may fall dead in the presence of God because there was no grace. So now Jesus becomes the priest and he goes before the throne before us and he carries everything and he carried everything. And he was the priest, he was the temple, and he is also the Spirit of God. So he understands all aspects of how it needs to be covered. So you have him going before you, and so that's why it's he went before you, and now you have grace. Now we live under grace, and with grace comes free will, the will of God, on the next level where it allows you to be freely yourself. And I say all this to say is that there are some things in your life that have been rules. There has been some things in our lives that have always worked. And I said this right before right before, but they're not going to work now. The only thing that's going to work is following God. They're not going to work. They're null and void. It's irrelevant. God has already covered those things. It's like taking the same test over and over again when you already know the answer. Why? Now let's move forward. And the security that we have with the law, sometimes it's like Stockholm syndrome. And sometimes it's like Stockholm syndrome. If you understand what Stockholm syndrome is, but if you don't, Stockholm syndrome is when you become sympathetic to your kidnapper, almost to the point of where you'll be protective of them. Sometimes people have fallen in love with their kidnapper. They have become their right hand. And it's a mental, emotional condition issue happening. It's a brainwashing. And it is hard to get out of. And so even though God's law was there to cover us and protect us, sometimes we have a Stockholm syndrome situation with rules and regulations. Things that don't really serve us, but he may have allowed for a time. But now that he is doing a new thing, it doesn't serve you. But you're like, but I don't want to leave it. And he's like, but it wasn't serving you. It was something I allowed, but it wasn't something, it was never my will for you to have to do this. The law was something that had to happen because Adam and Eve fell, but that was never the way God wanted it to be. So he had to give them something to hold them until he could come and restore things in the space in a way that it needed to be, so that they can walk freely again with God. And so sometimes the thing that was allowed is not the thing that was ever supposed to be. And we are sympathetic to that. And we are is our security blanket. And God was like, I'm your security. But of course you would think that, because like an abandoned child or like a lost child, whatever you had to do to self-soothe, you're going to rely on that because you don't know how to rely on me. But I love you right where you are enough to meet you where you are and teach you how to receive love from me, to teach you who you really are and your identity. Imagine this. Imagine a lost person, a lost man wandering the streets, looking, he looks homeless, he looks hungry, and he just, he can't remember who he is. But then there's this other fella that he runs into along the way of going anywhere. And they begin to have a conversation. And there's something about this guy that is so familiar, but he can't put his finger on it. But the more they walk and the more they talk, he seems like he may know him, but he doesn't know why. He seems like his face may be familiar, but he doesn't know why he knows that face. And then before you know it, they've walked so long that they've walked to a place that even the landscape begins to look a little different. And now I recognize that tree on that corner, and wait a minute, I recognize that hill, and I recognize that house. And then you see a man on the hill waving in the distance. A man with a long robe, thick because he's fed well, healthy and strong, waving. And then all past the hill, you begin to see others waving. And then you look at the man that's next to you, and you was like, wait a minute. I know this place. I used to live in this space. This used to be somewhere I lived. And the man next to you says, yes, this is your home. This is your inheritance. I am the one that had to come get you because I'm the only one that looked like you. I had to wander the street with you for a while to bring you back to a space so that you can see where you came from, because you are the prodigal child that had amnesia. You got lost at some point and you didn't even know it. You got dropped off somewhere. You got stolen by the enemy. You got kidnapped somewhere, and you just been muddling along, putting it all together, trying to make it work, not understanding who you are. And then Jesus comes into the picture, and there's something familiar about him. And you may not know what it is, but over time, all of a sudden you begin to get more familiar and get more close. And y'all having great conversations and laughing. You realize this whole time it was Jesus who was walking with you, taking you home so that you could remember who you are, so that you could know who you are. That's what he came to do, to deliver you from wandering and to restore back to you your memory. And the familiarity that you have with him is that thing that God says, I've given all men a measure of faith. He's given all something of him inside, that when he shows up, we should be able to recognize him. It may pique our interest. Some pay attention to it. Some may not pay attention to it. Who's that? Oh. And so all this time, can you imagine finding out the family that you were a part of or the street that you wandered on was never really your family. It finally all making sense that you were adopted, that you were taken and hidden among people who weren't your people. And you were wondering why you weren't fitting in. You were wondering why it wasn't working. You did all the things that you were supposed to do. You did all the rules and the laws and the cookie cutter things, and it wasn't working. And then God showed up and said, you never belonged to them. You have always been mine. But I had to send somebody that looked like you, that can gradually remind you of who you were so that it wouldn't be so much at once. Would you go back to the people that were never your people? Or would you be willing to climb the hill to your Father and find out what is on the other side of that hill? To meet the other people who were waving, meaning your real family, your sisters and your brothers that are also in Christ. That's what being a part of the body of Christ is. People you would never think were your family. You start seeing, wow, that is my family. People you would never think you would connect to, you realize, oh, I'm connecting to them. And so because God loves us so much, he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. It takes a choice to leave what you're used to follow something familiar yet unfamiliar. And a lot of us are in this place, not just meeting God, not just meeting Jesus, but meeting Jesus in a new space. Something about this place feels right, but I can't put my finger on it. Something about this place keeps pulling me closer this way, but I can't understand why. I can't make out everything. I still feel a little wobbly and a little confused, and I still don't understand what's happening, but I can't let go that I must go this way. I must try. I'm a little nervous because I'm used to that street. I'm used to that corner in that box. I know that the man at 5 o'clock always puts out bread. I know where I can get some things at. Sometimes I know what to expect over here, but at the same time, the conversation with this man here is so good. It reminds me of something. It reminds me of something better. It makes me feel like there's more to me than I might have known. There's more in me than I might have known. He's talking about things that I forgot I knew. That's what this space is. That's what this threshold is that a lot of us are going through. We're being reminded of who we always were that we forgot. And for a while, we had to have certain things just so that we would be in the place that he wanted to find us at, to lead us to the place he wanted us to stay with him at. You were never supposed to stay where you were. That was never everything before. That was never the full purpose. That was just what I allowed to be for a time so that I could plant myself into your space and deliver you from rules and regulations and order of people and perfection of people, and plant you down in my will where you can actually grow freely now, where you can actually be yourself, where you can actually use your gifts and talents, because that conversation you've been having with me, that conversation that's pulling up ideas, that conversation that's picking at your memory, that conversation that you didn't realize how much intelligence you had. You didn't realize that you knew what this meant or that meant. You didn't even realize all the knowledge you had. I've been doing this to let you know it's always been with you. You just forgot because you didn't know who you were, because you were once lost, and now I have been the one that found you. See, people say, I found God. No, God found you, and then one day your eyes were open. But God was always in your corner, walking down the street, getting familiar, letting yourself get familiar with him so that he can lead you to a safe space, a space where now you can understand your true identity. This space that we're in, we are transitioning from one identity to another. One identity to another. And the identity we're coming from a broken identity to a whole identity. And it's sometimes so hard to stomach wholeness. Not because you didn't want it, but it hurts to stretch yourself for it to fit in you. You didn't know it was going to be painful to stretch. You didn't know it was going to be painful to open yourself up for a blessing. You didn't know it was going to be painful to get good things. You didn't know that it was going to be painful, because it's like, how can a good thing hurt so bad? Oh, Jesus. How can a good thing hurt so bad? I know it's good for me, but it hurts. Because I'm not used to stretching this muscle or exercising this space. I'm not used to using my mind this way. But God said, but that's where your gifts are. I need you to use those gifts. I'm waking them up. I'm waking them up. Lazarus, come forth. He's calling so many Lazaruses out of you. He's calling this gift and that gift, and it hurts. And if you ever talk to somebody who's ever had amnesia, one of the things that they have are headaches. They have headaches because when memory starts coming back, it hurts. Because it's making its room. It's sitting down. It's waking up. It's stretching its arms out. It's saying, I'm here. I'm awake. And I feel it because it's a tender spot. It's a spot that hasn't been touched in a while. Have you ever went and got a massage and someone touches a spot on one of your legs or your sciatic area, and it just takes your breath away? But at the same time, you need them to keep rubbing that knot out, that hard tissue out, so that healing can permit, it can go forward. We never knew that a blessing could hurt. We just saw the picture. We didn't ever eat the food. We never had to cook it, taste test it. We didn't know how much pepper was in it. We didn't know what it took to eat the blessing. We just saw the picture. This whole time we've been looking at pictures. But God said your life is bigger than a picture. It's bigger than the carrot that's been dangling in front of you. I have prepared a full meal for you in the presence of your enemy at a table made just for you, accompanied by me. Not only am I serving you, I'm sitting there with you, eating with you, dining with you. Because when I do this thing, they're going to know I'm with you. When I do this thing, they're going to know you know God. When I do this thing, they're going to know I know you. They're going to know I know you. Yeah, a lot of people say they know God. But how many people we can really point and be like, yeah, God know them. Oh, God is with them these days. So it's going to take accepting a little soreness, a little uncomfortableness for the greaterness that is in you. It's time to make room for the best parts of you. It's time to make room for the things that were on reserve. See, you thought that thing that happened to you so many years ago is what killed something in you. God said, I conquered death. So I conquered death in the flesh, the spirit, and the soul. What do you think? Do you think that I was going to let the enemy take something I gave to you and not give it back to you? And now do you not understand? I set you up for a blessing that's seven times. When the enemy takes something, he has to return it back to you. What is it? 7 times. What is this episode? The 7th episode. What did we just read about 7 being completion? When somebody takes something from you, maybe, have you ever considered that pain was allowed so that you would be set up for a greater blessing? And even if it wasn't God's will, because he is the law fulfilled. He is going to hold the enemy accountable to fulfill that rule for you while you get to operate in the freeness of God's will for you. Because God is all that. He is the law. He is free will. He is all those things encompassed into one. We don't need to follow all these restrictions. We just need to follow God. He made it simple for us. This world is full of distractions. We don't need things to be more complicated than they are. And the thing about it is, people are sheep. And this is what God calls us. He calls us his sheep. But that is, sheep are kind of dumb. I mean, they are. Okay. They can be led away very easily. They can be cuddly and all that stuff, but they can be kind of dumb too. And they can be led away very easily. They can. And if you look at the world today, we have all these lines. We got dotted lines on the street just so that we don't run into each other on the way to work. And we still run into each other on the way to work because we need to be governed. But God is the one that needs to govern us. So sometimes it hurts when you begin to grow to be able to hold the water weight of your blessing. Child, ain't nothing like water weight. It's so interesting because you can dive deep in water. You can drink water. You can give water out. You can use water to water your grass. Water can evaporate it. Rain can come down. Water is what's in the air for the reason why a cloud forms or a tornado. Water can be hot. It can be cold. It can be steam. It can be cleansing. But water is powerful. And God said, I'm trying to expand you on the inside for the water weight. God's water weight is good. Now, we had that water weight from when we had kids or eating too many chips or salt foods. When your belt went from 30 something to 40. Yeah. Yeah. So because we retain water, but God said, no. This water weight is going to be good for your soul. I'm expanding you. I'm stretching you out. I'm stretching you out, and it hurts. But anything, anything worth having is worth being stretched for. You're not going to be satisfied staying where you've been. Because the greatness in you is the reason why you've been upset and unsatisfied and frustrated is because it cannot take being put into a box anymore. You're not happy where you are. You're not happy with the way things were. You don't want to go back to that. And let me tell you something. God is going to make it to where you can't even go back if you wanted to. You can't even go back if you wanted to. When the children of Israel left Egypt and they crossed over the Red Sea, and the water enclosed on the Egyptians, and what was said? That the enemies you see today, you will not see tomorrow. Sometimes that applies to your situation. The situation that you see, that you have lived in today, I'm going to make sure that I wash it away because it wasn't built on things that I'm trying to build you on right now. I may have allowed it. It might have been time for it for a while. But I'm washing it all away, and you will not be able to return. You know, it has said, return back to sender, not this time. You have to go forward. And you're not going to get to take everyone with you. You're not going to get to take every idea with you. Some of those things that you are still bent, and I'm going to say hell bent on, not heavenly bent, because you're going crazy trying to get it done. Some of the things that you're hell bent on, making sure it happens. God said that project was never meant to go into this place. I gave you something that you would fail at. You didn't think God did this? Yeah. I let you fail because I needed you to see that your way was not going to work. I let you have it the way you wanted it so you could understand that it was not going to work. Yes, you asked me, God, can I do it this way? And I said, yes, I gave you permission. But was that my will for you going forward? No, that was my will for you to learn a lesson. That is not by your own might that these things will happen. By my might, the might of the Holy Spirit, these things will happen. We have to go forward now. Not by might, not by power, by your spirit, God. Send your spirit, God. And I can personally tell you this is not easy. Because this is the space I am in currently. And I can only talk to you guys about the truth that I know God is allowing me to talk about. And I know if I'm in this space, there are so many of us that are in this space. And it's hard when you literally cannot take what you thought you could take. You have to say goodbye to things, but let the dead bury the dead. It's not your responsibility anymore. I know they told you it was. I know they told you because of your position in the family that you needed to show up in a certain way, but God didn't say that about you. I know they told you that because of the name that they gave you, that I want you to do. Yeah, because, they would give you certain names to mean certain things, but God will give you a new name. I know that they told you because of your position at that job that you're supposed to just settle. I know that they told you because of your skin or your race or your gender or the neighborhood you came from that you shouldn't be able to do this. I know that people have tried to take the gifts that they've seen in you and form them in their own image. I know that some people try to make it seem like you need them to talk to God. I know that some people make you feel inadequate about your gifts because that was the assignment. So by the time you got here, you would question everything. I know that they told you that it was dead, but really, honey, they stole it and they hid it away because they could never really kill the gift. They had to lie that it was dead. Just like they lied to Joseph's daddy and told him he had died when Joseph had just been kidnapped and sold into slavery. Just like Joseph came back to them, full and rich, your gift has been cultivated in the secret places. And it's coming back to you. What is yours is yours. I don't care if they beat you up. I don't care if it was a parent that was abusive, that tried to beat the faith, that tried to beat the hope out of you, that tried to beat hate into you. Who God has called you to be, when it's time for you to be it, it is irrelevant what the enemy has tried to do. It has no bearing on your gift. God said the gift come without repentance. If it come without repentance, what if you can still use your gift any way you want to? What you think? You think somebody else can just take your gift? God said, why they were trying to convince you that they killed you, killed it, took it. I was hiding the best parts of you in the palm of my hand. They never had you. This is why suicide, you can't believe how you feel. You can't always believe how you feel. Your feelings will lie to you. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that people aren't doing what they're doing. But when it comes to what's going on in your mind and in your heart and in your spirit, and it's saying you're not worth it. You don't have nothing. Who are you telling me that I don't have anything? I'm sorry. Did you create me? Did you make me? Why are you here? I must be somebody, because why are you trying to get me to take myself out? It must be because you can't take me out. It must be because I have dominion and power here in this earth and you do not have what I have. It must be that you don't have the position or the authority to do what I do in my own life. It must mean that I have more authority in my life than you do. And you're just using suggestions and hoping that I believe them and follow through. I will not be following through today. We will not be following through on invasive thoughts that overwhelm us, that torment us in the name of Jesus. This is not what's going to happen anymore, any longer, because the truth of the matter, ain't nothing going to fight you that hard. Nobody fights somebody that hard that is not a threat. And let me just be honest, showing up already put a dent in the attentions of the enemy. Showing up, just being born. Why do you think we have so many people going when it comes to attacking even babies being born? Because your presence is even a weapon. Just because you don't feel it don't mean it's not real. Just because you don't see the air don't mean you're not breathing it. Just because you don't feel it does not mean it is not real. You showing up has power. You being born move things around in the world. Let me put it like this. In science, everything is made of matter. And no two things made of matter can occupy the same space. No two things can occupy the same space. Like, I can pick up my baby, right? They can sit on my lap. But they can't sit in my lap to where we are occupying the same space. They can sit on my lap. But they can't sit in the seat that I sit. They can only sit on me sitting in the seat. You showing up took up space that the enemy could not afford to lose. And when you start moving around, you're going to take up more space. And his hope is, if I can't stop you from being here, then maybe I can stop you from moving. That's for me. If I can't stop you from being here, maybe I can stop you from moving. Because we know air takes up space, but when that tornado starts kicking up, when that hurricane kicks up, that tropical storm starts happening, it hits everything. You a whirlwind waiting to happen, a tsunami waiting to crash somebody's shores, the enemy shores. And he doesn't need you to understand who you are. He needs to make you even being present seem so insignificant that you won't question anything else. That you will stay stuck there. He's trying to shrink your mind by getting you to focus on the lie, when the lie is like a grain of sand stuck on a window. But if you zoom out, the rest of the window is clean. The rest of the window is clean. You didn't come this far in your life to not follow all the way through. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's going to hurt. You're going to cry sometimes. Hey, Carlos, you're going to cry sometimes. Sometimes you're not going to have anything to say. Sometimes you're going to be moments where you feel isolated, or you're going to have to be isolated. But God would never leave you without a witness. He going to send somebody. And I'm sorry to all of those who have been born into seem like the wrong family. I'm sorry for all those that feel like they have had to fight so many unnecessary battles. They feel like they don't have any energy for the blessing to be stretched. But God said, this is also the good part about my will. I get to be responsible for your blessing. I get to be the one that is held accountable for it following through. You don't have to be that one. All I want you to do is stay present in me. Just stay present, because your presence takes up enough space, and I can do something with that. I don't need you to figure out all the answers. I don't need you to have A, B, C, and D put into. in order. That's not what I came to clear that out of your way. I came to remove that confusion. I came to remove expectations that have been put on you that were unrealistic. You do not need to, no more answering to unrealistic expectations. I don't know. That just hit. So, I don't know who's been answering to unrealistic expectations, but no more answering to unrealistic expectations. It is not for you to be the answer to that. God is the answer. And if people need something, they need to start going to God. And I don't even care if, yes, people tell me, well, you used to give people permission to do that, so you got to be accountable for that. No, this is how you be accountable for it. You stop doing it. You're not going to apologize for what you didn't know better about. Hey, you know what? Sorry, I didn't know better. That's the only time. After that, I said what I said. I'm not accountable for this anymore. You're going to have to get used to it. Guess what? It's your time to stretch too. Person who thinks I'm supposed to have show up for unrealistic expectations. The audacity to think that I'm supposed to do certain things for you that I was never supposed to do. Unrealistic expectations. It's just hitting me. Unrealistic expectations. It makes me angry, that people, and this is the thing, sometimes people knew that it came from your broken space. Sometimes people knew that it came from your desire to be needed, because that's where you put your identity and value in. And this is the thing, we all have a healthy desire through God to want to show up and love and help people. But brokenness makes us operate in that in an unhealthy way. We're supposed to want to help people. So it's hard to grapple. Well, but I'm supposed to want to help people. But God has a way of doing things. He gives you wisdom and how to be there for people and when to be there for people and timing. And when you do it with God's love, you're doing it with a shield of covering. So even if they rejected. God didn't reject you. You did. You showed up. You were obedient. You were present. That's all he asked you to do. They didn't reject you. They rejected God. Not for you to worry about. Not for you to take personally. But when you do give out of a certain space and you're doing it for people and they reject it, it hurts really bad. And your value is not marked by how much you could do for everybody else. You are always made to be loved by God first and then to love him. Your value is in him. And he said you're wonderful and fearfully made. Meaning you're beautiful, and don't play with my child. Don't play. So excuse me. We're exiting, guys, and we're going together, and it's not going to be easy, and it feels overwhelming, and we don't have all the answers. We have a lot of questions sometimes. Sometimes we don't even have the questions. We just don't know. We're like, I don't know what this is. But no, it's the space that you're supposed to be in, and sometimes that has to be enough. That has to be enough, because honestly, I don't want to ask too many questions right now. I don't want to know everything because what am I going to do with that information? I'm still going to have to just follow through what he already told me to do. So what is extra information going to do? Is it going to make it harder for me to follow through? I don't need to know. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to know more than what he wants me to know. And if I have a healthy unctioning by the Holy Spirit to ask a question, then yes, let it happen. Don't be afraid to ask God things, but sometimes we spend so much energy wondering instead of doing. And we're going to another level of discipline. And sometimes you think you've been disciplined because you've been sometimes, like for instance, I'm going to finish soon, but for one example, sometimes we think we're disciplined because we have a job that tells us we have to wake up at a certain time, be there at a certain time, or our kids are in school. But how many people saw how not disciplined they were when the pandemic happened? Because discipline is not based out of a system. It's an inner thing. It's a inner integrity. It's an inner drive. It's an inner, I'm showing up for myself. And so the way God is doing things, he's not going to give you everything at once sometimes, because he's trying to create a pattern within you, and of a habit, a good habit, not necessarily of rules, but a good habit of consistency, so that no matter what the system is that you're dealing with, you are consistent with him and yourself and your space and your boundaries, so that you can operate and maneuver in this world according to God and not according to a system. See, we're never really trained to develop in that. We think we're developed sometimes, but as soon as those things get taken away, we start seeing, oh, I'm good at this, but whoa, I didn't know I was that bad at this. Oh my God. I thought I had this on lock. No, you was committed to that job because of that money, even though the money probably wasn't as good as you needed it, but you had bills. So you showed up because of need. You didn't show up because of purpose, and it drained you. You didn't show up because you were enjoying yourself. You showed up because you were frustrated and you had to. This is what freedom is. God is trying to give us liberty and freedom. He doesn't want us just showing up because, oh, it's a need. No, I want you to show up and I want you to enjoy the process. I want you to operate in your gifts. I want your gifts to make room for you. I want you to show up and then operate with love. Because your gift is the thing that opens up the door so that you can show up as who you actually are, so that you can be a witness to somebody. Because that other person I was talking about earlier, that I just said, God doesn't leave you without a witness. Sometimes you're going to be their witness. And your gift opens up the door so that you can have the access to them to be their witness. Joseph needed Caleb. Moses needed Aaron. Witness. Our gift don't make room for us just for financially and all that stuff. It makes room for us to meet people that otherwise we would not meet. It's about positioning. It's not about how famous you are or how unfamous you are. So let God have his perfect work in you. Let him open up the doors. Let him worry about who he brings to you, because God is going to bring you willing people. He may bring you some people they actually come and seek you out, but they are all actually still a little stubborn. But there's something there for the reason why he has allowed you to be around them, because once again, your presence takes up space, and you can't deny it. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. It's taking up room. So take up your position. Take up the room that you are. They say take up space, sis. Take up space, bro. Take it up. Be you. Be you right now. Don't worry about, I don't want to be this person or that person. Be you. You can't be them. I'm not saying it in an arrogant way, but you can't be the other people. You can only be you. And so you only need to worry about what God has you do in that moment. You don't need to worry about today. You don't need to worry about tomorrow or yesterday. In that same breath, when Jesus was talking about go, let the dead bury the dead, he also was told them not to worry about tomorrow. Don't concern yourself about what happened yesterday, what you're going to eat or drink. Today has enough trouble. Just live in today. He really is trying to keep it simple for us. He's doing everything else. He just needs us to be present, because your presence is enough. And then when he gives you instructions on how to do things in that space, that's when you do those things his way and how he wants it. Because aren't we all in the same goal of trying to get to glory? Aren't we all in the same goal of trying to have a good life right now? Are we all in the same goal of just, trying to have a better way of doing things? Yeah, I would hope so. So I hope this makes sense, guys, that we are exiting. We're leaving. We're done with a lot. We can't go back. And and that's okay. I'm sorry for the things that were lost in the fire. It's a movie when a woman lost her husband in a fire and she couldn't get him back. I'm sorry for the things that you had to leave behind. I'm sorry for the things that the water swept away, but you didn't need them. You needed, God needed space in you. So you have to empty some things out so that he will be the one that's available to you and not everyone else. He wants this to be you and him. And everybody in your life at this point coming needs to respect that space. You want it to be you. He has more for you, and it feels uncomfortable, but it's just your gifts being stretched that you forgot you had, didn't know you had, or that you thought they died. And some of you guys that felt dead inside are beginning to live again. He never left you, nor did he forsake you. He sat there with you until it was time, and now it's time. No more waiting. It's time to live and not die. Time to go forward and bloom and flourish. Stretch out your wings, right? And fly. I will be flying with you. We're doing this together. So thank you for showing up today. I hope this helped. I'm just going to pray. I've been trying to remember to pray just in case somebody needs it. I wasn't doing that at first. Wasn't really on my mind. But I'm gonna pray today. And like I said, we're doing one thing at a time, one day at a time. So today I remembered. So today I'm gonna pray. Um, um, this is new for me. Okay. Whew. Lord, thank you for thank you for being God. Thank you for being the God that you are. Thank you for not letting go of us. Thank you for everything. You're so intentional about us and on purpose about us. Nothing you do concerning us is an accident, God. And I just thank you that you mean what you say and you say what you mean. We know that it's true. Yet we deal with the elements of our flesh and the element of the enemy. And we grapple with them sometimes and we forget to chime back in on what you said. We can get distracted by both. So God, I pray, Lord, in this new season, in this new era, in this latter part of life, as you take us through the different stages of that and what that means for each of us, that you show us when it's our flesh and when it's the enemy, when we need to speak and rebuke, cast out, resist the enemy, or when we need to humble ourselves. God, show us when we need to get up and celebrate, rejoice, and praise your name. But God, always help us to stay before you. Whether we're in the dark or in the light, I pray, Lord, that our ears are stay open to the sound of your heartbeat and the sound of your voice. That we look for you in the crowd and we look for you in the dark. We look for you on the mountaintop and we look for you in the valley, God. Not because you're not with us, but God, that we are always looking for another side, a new face of you. Because God, there's so many faces of you. We're learning new names that you have that we didn't know you had. New faces of you that we didn't know you had. The other side of your hand that we didn't know you had. God, experiencing so much of you in your bosom, up under your arm, in your lap, you hugging us, God. Any position we experience you in, God, we are grateful and we are looking for your face. In all the new things, we are running toward it. Help us not to shy away from the new side of you that you show us. Help us not to be afraid or for fear to set in. We speak against fear. We speak against doubt. We speak against the lies that we continue to repeat in our head to make us concerned about our ability. God, you have already confirmed that we have the ability through the Holy Spirit, that we don't need to worry about how capable we are because you have already begun to do the work. We are already here. We have already arrived. The Egyptians have been washed away. We have come all the way out of the desert. We are beginning to settle, going into the promised land to settle. God, you've done so many things. God, those who are new to knowing you and those who have been knowing you for a while and becoming familiar with a new side of you, God, I pray the same prayer that we trust you anyway. We trust you no matter how small we feel, no matter how daunting it feels, God, because the truth of the matter is we never had control. And the best place to be when we're under you is either praising your name or humbling. But either way, it's staying humble and praising you and saying thank you. God, help us not to adopt religious ways, but help us to stay free in you, walking in liberty and joy. Meet us where we are with laughter. Show us how to enjoy the process, the things and the gifts that are in the process for us. Help us not to be anxious about the next, God, but help us. There's so much reward in the now concerning the process of the latter. And we want to live in all of it. We want to enjoy all that you have for us as we live this life. Thank you for this life. Thank you for this life. I pray peace. I pray covering. I pray over all the children and all the parents and anyone who's listening who has any desire to do better, any desire for peace, any desire for you. I pray that they get it. And if you don't know the Lord, all you have to, if you want to know the Lord, all you got to do is ask him and say this: Lord, I ask you to come into my heart. I recognize that you are the Son of God, that Jesus is your Son, and that he died on the cross for my sins, and I believe that. And I want to live for you, and I want you to live in me. And then you go. And then, of course, you get in a Bible-based church. But if anything, I would sign. I would try out the Potter's House online or Concord online. Those are the churches. Um, and I would try to go into a service, but let the Lord lead you, of course, because you don't think that just because you're brand new that you can't hear him. It was him that you heard today for the reason why you received him. So no matter when you hear this, I want you to always remember that no matter if your crown falls, tilts, or gets in the mud, pick it up, put it back on, because it doesn't matter how much it's cracked, it will always shine. All right. This is Lorenza Nicole Molina. This is View from the Throne, and I'll see y'all next week at the throne. Bye. Oh, and by the way, thank you to everybody that chimed in today. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'm probably about to read some of y'all's comments because I didn't see some of these at first, but thank you so much for chiming in. I appreciate all the support from you guys. Love y'all so very much. Um, uh, Brianna, Derek, Carlos, and there's so many other people that come in and out, but these are the ones I'm pointing out today. But thank y'all so much for just loving me and supporting me. Talk to you guys later. Okay. Oh, let's see. I wish you would just sit doop, but I can't. Do 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 do. Now, Lord.